20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
Mr. Armstrong, Bart Sibrel, ABC Digital. Wanted to give you the opportunity to swear in the Bible that you walked on the moon. Will you put your left hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
That's one small step for man.
Mr. Sibrel, you do not deserve answers.
Do you think you can get to heaven without repenting? Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon? Now put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon. You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
Ignition. Run away, Houston. Vector good.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this slightly later than usual episode of Alien Addict. We won't keep you too long today. I just want to do the usual thing of reminding you that there's merch in the merch store. We've got new t-shirts that you can go and buy. We're available everywhere to listen to and watch. You can give us a 5-star review or a thumbs up on whatever you're watching. We put out 4 podcasts a week. 2 of those are live streamed, 2 of those are audio only. So if you don't subscribe to the podcast, you're only getting half the stuff we put out. Without further ado, my co-host Oliver and our guest Bart Sibrel, thank you for coming to Alien Addict.
To be here. I guess it's midnight there.
Yeah, it is. It's okay though. We're good. I've turned into an old man lately, so this is well past my bedtime. But I'm happy to be here to speak to you because I've said to Ollie a couple of times, I was given your documentary, Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, by my decorating teacher at college because I was talking about like space stuff with one of the other students. And it was the first thing, it was like the thing that got me into conspiracy theories. So, you know, it's probably would never have started doing channels like this if it wasn't for that documentary. So, yeah, thank you, I think.
We could have taken a different.
If you're soundproofing your podcast room and a tile falls on your head and kills you, it's my fault.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of responsibility here, but what can you do? Yes, how appropriate that we're talking at midnight, so the truth is coming out while people are sleeping.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good. So I'd like to start this off by saying, by asking, when you before you started researching, right, A Funny Thing, what were the things that like got to you that made you go down the road of looking into the moon landing in the first place? Because because your film is like I say is a gateway for lots of people into like whether we went to the moon or not. Like, what sparked your curiosity in the first place?
Well, let me first say I love your introduction, by the way. You know, the music is so compelling. When I see that introduction just a few minutes ago, it's just shock and sadness that they really did fake the moon landing. It's not a theory, it's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And to realize that this is humanity lying to one another, stealing from one another, killing one another, and it's the people in charge doing this to the people they're supposed to take care of. And this is still the state today. It's pretty sad. The way that I was able to perceive the truth was simply having an open mind. There's a saying that pride comes before a fall, or that pride blinds you. And pride is simply the unwillingness to be wrong. And humility is the willingness to be wrong. And I remember going to a church once, and they prided themselves on having an answer for everything, regardless of whether it was the right answer or not. They had to have an answer. And they're like, who here likes to be wrong? And I was the only one wanting to raise my hand because it's good to be wrong. You're learning something new, and then I'm not walking around in error. And so I believed, like everybody else, the moon missions are real. And more than that, I kind of worshiped them. I got a VIP packet of color prints. I was 4 years old, asleep in bed at the time. But my father was in the Air Force, and find out later, the first fake moon landing was filmed at an Air Force base. And I moved around house to house about every 2 years. And wherever I went, this series of pictures of Apollo 11 were like a shrine in every bedroom that I went to. And then when I was 14, I saw a gentleman who worked at NASA for 6 years with high security clearance declare that they never went. They bluffed, like having a bad hand in poker. And I thought, oh, never thought about that. So I went back to my room and looked at the pictures with, a different perspective. And in the original prints, the soil and the background are two different colors. They've since color corrected it. But if you look at the Chinese probes on the moon, the soil of the moon is a caramel brown. That's the color it is. It looks kind of grayish blue because of the glare. So the first thing I noticed is the soil's one color, and then the backgrounds are a different color, grayish blue. And now the soil is grayish blue. But if you look at the original prints, the red, white, and blue on the flag is there in both pictures. And then the older ones have a brown soil, and the newer ones have a grayish blue. Well, what color is it? The red, white, and blue is the same on both of them. They've trying to cover their tracks. And then I saw like secondary shadows of backdrops, the wall itself behind the astronaut projecting a secondary fainter shadow, kind of like if you remember the TV show Bonanza, you would see like 2 or 3 shadows going on at the time. And that kind of planted a seed in my mind. Oh, never thought about that. Maybe they did fake it. And 10 years after that, I'd become a filmmaker at about the age of 24 and was producing or editing something for the gentleman who produced the program I saw 10 years earlier about the guy telling the world we didn't go to the moon. He put me in touch with them, and he suggested as a filmmaker that I make a film about it. And I originally turned down the project because I thought, there's a lot of things that don't add up, that just something you could say spiritually smelled wrong. And I'm like, if they really didn't go to the moon and I start looking into this, it could be dangerous. Why should I risk my life for what Richard Nixon did? So I turned down the project. It wasn't until about 5 years later I developed a conviction of right and wrong and good and evil and truth and lies, light and darkness, that battle is going on in front of us in an unseen realms, and that if they faked it, it's more profound than if they'd actually gone. I mean, that's what people have to see. The faking of the moon landing and the lying and the embezzling of billions of dollars and murdering honest Americans who are going to expose their crimes. That's the opinion of the dead relatives who told me this, not my opinion. When you realize that's the case from the country that claims to be the light of truth and justice in the world, it's so much more profound historically that they faked it than if they had actually gone. So what we have is this great truth of the depraved, fallen nature of mankind and the governments that represent them. And it's not known to mankind. It's like a cure for cancer. We can't progress unless we acknowledge this great folly. And I found a quote from the most published female author in the world, most people have never heard of. And she was at the time referring to the Tower of Babel. And she said, the monument of their pride became a memorial of their folly. And I hope that will become the case of the moon landing. It's the monument of their pride, the greatest accomplishment of mankind, the greatest accomplishment of the United States. And if the truth comes out, it will be shameful for the United States. The dollar could crash, the stock market could crash when it's known. But what choice do we have? It's like having a gangrene limb. You can pretend it's not there and then you'll die, or you have to face the facts and cut it off. So that's what we have to do. You can't have a great awakening. You can have a great awakening about everything else, but if people still believe this lie because it's a pleasant lie that comforts their pride, then there is no great awakening. This is the linchpin or the finger out of the dike that will bring down the corrupt United States government. It will enrage people because they didn't have to lie about it. They could have just said they set a goal they couldn't keep, but they did it anyway. And when I was thinking about why, I thought about President Clinton when he finally, after denying it 100 times that he had an affair, when he finally got caught, they asked him, well, why did you do it? And he said, well, because I could, because he could get away with it. And when I saw your opening, it's like, you know why they faked the moon landing? Because they could get away with it. That's our leaders. And when you interview dead relative or dead astronauts' relatives, their children and their spouses, who say they were murdered by the CIA for not cooperating with corruption at NASA, then you realize the government not only faked the moon landing, they murdered their own people to cover it up, and we financed it. We paid a third of our income to not only be deceived, to pay the salaries of CIA agents to murder our neighbors for trying to expose the criminals' crimes. Our government is run by the mafia. That's who runs our government. They're a bunch of gangsters, and get in their way and they will take you down one way or the other. So that's my opening remarks.
But what have you ever asked yourself why Russia's never stepped in over the years? Because it was a space race, and you know, I've sat on the fence with this for such a long time. I've had arguments back and forth with my father over it, quite fun ones. But why do you think Russia's never kind of like stepped in and said, you didn't do this?
Well, let me just, answer the three alleged, arguments for why the moon landings must be real. The first is it involved 100,000, 200,000 people, and that many people can't keep a secret. Well, I mean, during World War II, the atomic bomb was the greatest secret on the planet. And it involved 129,500 people, and only 8 knew what they were building. The flight director, Eugene Krantz, who I've spoken to, said that a person in the command center at those consoles in the heart of NASA can tell no difference whatsoever between a simulation practice flight and a real one. It's just a bunch of numbers going by on a screen. In both cases, they can't tell the difference. So if a person in the command center can't tell the difference between a real flight and a fake flight, I don't think we can as a 5-year-old watching it on television in our living room. And so that doesn't fly. You have to think, I mean, come on, is the CIA really stupid enough to tell the person making the glove or the boot or the door handle, hey, we're really not going to the moon. Be sure not to tell anybody. I mean, come on. And there's no independent press coverage. It's not like World War II going on in front of a billion eyewitnesses. There's a TV picture by the Nixon administration that we have to assume is truthful, right? And so that doesn't fly. And then the next reason is, well, they have these pictures of lunar satellites, allegedly, of a little shadow that they claim is the shadow of the lunar module. Well, they already faked full body pictures of someone standing on the surface of the moon. So I don't think they have a problem faking a little shadow a few weeks later. You're asking for proof from the fox that it didn't steal a chicken, you see? So that doesn't fly. And then the third one, which is your question, why wouldn't the Russians rat us out? Well, let me tell you something. I know somebody who works at this hour in the command center of the Chinese Space Agency. And they told me not that long ago, everybody there knows the moon missions are fake. They are blackmailing NASA for space technology in exchange for not blowing the whistle on it. China has never said that the moon missions are real. That's their way of keeping their honor. They also never call them out because they're being blackmailed. I mean, if I had a picture of a world leader with a prostitute, I could upload it to the internet and take them down. And then that would be it. It's useless. Or I could blackmail them year after year after year after year. You see that? One of the things that just came out in November, they have these big conventions around the world, automobile conventions, shoe conventions, whatever. There was an AI convention held in Moscow. Google's neural network was showcased. That's multiple AIs hooked up together. Now, just like at these car shows, you can drive the car around the track, but it'll never hit the marketplace. They let different teams play around with the neural network, the most advanced AI in the world. One team had it write a symphony, one had it write a novel. It has a special deep fake detection program that has never been wrong. You feed it a video of Trump or Biden, it can tell you in 1 second whether it's a deep fake or not. So one team in November, not that long ago, they fed it pictures from the surface of the moon taken from the Chinese probes that said they're real. Then they fed them pictures from the Nixon administration that were allegedly taken on the moon. It said 100% fake, fake background, fake foreground, fake this, fake that. Putin was there. Go to Sibrel.com. You can see a video of him being shown that the AI says that the moon missions are fake. Now, either Google's multi-billion-dollar investment, decades-long research and development is a piece of junk, or they didn't go to the moon, right? Putin looks terrified, not surprised at all, terrified. Why is he afraid? He's afraid the truth is going to come out. He can't blackmail us anymore. You see, and then that story is not anywhere to be found on RT. And when I put a comment in another article about AI doing this or that, I just put, well, why haven't you ran the story about the AI proving the moon missions are fake? They deleted the comment. I've never had a comment deleted on RT in 10 years except that one. So Russia is suppressing the story. Don't think that China and Russia are our enemy. That is as fanciful as the moon landings being real. The CIA, which runs our country, is madly in love with China. And this whole idea that we're at war with them or going to have a war with Taiwan or whatever. If there is a war, I'm sure ships will be blown up and people will be killed, but it'll be completely contrived like a theatrical production that both sides are in on. And that's the world we live in. You have to understand, Bobby Kennedy Jr., who has more access to the JFK files than Oliver Stone, says that his uncle was killed by the CIA. Robert McNamara, defense secretary during the Vietnam War, which Americans were 90% against. 90% of Americans were against entering World War II on December 6, 1941. One day later, 90% were for it. So Robert McNamara, before he died, confessed they needed the public behind what the government wanted to do. We need to create a Pearl Harbor type of incident regarding the Vietnam War. So they contrived an attack by a North Vietnamese ship on an American ship. He said before he died, it never even happened. Congress passed a law based on that incident, which never happened, that started a war that led to the death of 3 million people, including 58,220 Americans. So I think if the federal government is willing to kill their own duly elected president, willing to kill 58,220 of their own soldiers without reason, I don't think they have a problem faking an image of the moon on television. If it weren't for people's obsession with it being a positive lie, because whoever killed Kennedy, he's still dead. It's just a matter of who did it and why. 9/11, you can change hats on who did it and why, but all those people are dead. This is different. This is candy. I come along trying to take away people's candy and give them a plate of manure, and they are defending the candy. They are defending the criminals deceiving them and murdering their brethren. What can you do? Another rant. Thank you for letting me speak.
So, like, obviously, with it being such a hot button topic, and you said before, it's these people are capable of doing like pretty diabolical things. Like at the time of filming A Funny Thing, and when you were going around, the access you got, given what you were trying to do, was like pretty phenomenal. Like, did you ever feel in danger when you were doing it?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Exactly what I would say.
The film was financed by someone who builds rockets for NASA, who wishes to remain anonymous. He gave me $1 million to expose the moon landing fraud. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon, which you can see for free on the homepage of Sibrel.com right now. 45-minute film. Just to edit the film, I spent about 4,000 hours. That's 40 hours a week for 2 years. It took 7 years to produce. I was producing it under the theory it might be true that they faked it. And lo and behold, we uncovered classified footage of them faking part of the moon mission right in front of your eyes. And there's a lot that I did not put in the film because relatives of deceased Apollo astronauts asked me not to, because they were pursuing their own investigation and didn't want me, disrupting it. Now that they're dead, I wrote a book, took me 15 years to write and 2 years to edit, called Moon Man, which I read myself in an audio version or Kindle or print at Sibrel.com, that has 17 interactive video links. And I go into great detail as to the behind the scenes X-Files type of things that happened to me that I've never discussed publicly before, because it's already a difficult pill to swallow that they really did fake the moon landing. If I go into me being kidnapped and drugged with truth serum and escaping and pissing in a cup and putting it in a lab to prove that I've been drugged with truth serum, and go back to the lab and find out they had a break-in over the weekend and the only thing stolen was my urine sample. That really happened. So I figure, this is my final statement on the matter. I go into all that detail in a couple of chapters, one called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to CNN. Because when I found that tape that proves to 2 NBC news directors agreed, it proves 100% that they faked the moon landing. Okay. I rushed it to CNN and was literally abducted by government agents, given truth serum to the point of vomiting, told them anything and everything they wanted to know. So waterboarding is completely unnecessary, let me tell you. Escaped their custody, made my way back to Nashville, pissed in a cup, gave it to a friend to put in a lab in his name, thinking I could outwit the CIA. I said, I'm going to prove this to NBC News that I was drugged by this exotic drug. So when we check back, my friend tells me there was a problem at the lab. And I'm like, well, what happened? He says, well, they had a break-in over the weekend and the only thing stolen was your urine sample. Of course, that freaked out the people at the lab. They're like, we don't know who you are, but take your business elsewhere. So not only did they really fake the moon landing, you have to understand this. I talk about this in my book at Sibrel.com. Ralph Nader, bless his heart, has done more for this country than 10 presidents or 20 presidents combined. And he was trying to expose the fact that the automobile manufacturers, General Motors in particular, knew that putting airbags in cars would save, 10,000 lives a year, but they just didn't want to spend the $200 to do it. There's a gentleman who was the president of GM. His name was Mr. Roche, and he hired former FBI agents to follow Ralph Nader just to not have to spend $200 per car. Imagine what the government would do to someone who has videotape evidence that the moon missions are fake. And then, as I'm about to finish my book, I'm put in touch with an eyewitness who was there, who I witnessed them filming Apollo 11 a year in advance at his Air Force base, and even confessed as he's dying to murdering a coworker who was going to blab to cover it up. That's in my book at Sibrel.com. We have 4 incontrovertible proofs: an eyewitness, videotape of them using a 1-foot model of the Earth in a special effects shot dated 2 days into the flight. We have the fact that you have shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, and what they claim is sunlight. Just go outside. I show this on the homepage of Sibrel.com. Shadows and sunlight on a cloudless day will always be parallel to people, to telephone poles, to trees. And we have a picture, allegedly on the moon, of shadows intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart. That's an electrical light. You can prove the moon landings are fake with one picture. And then we have the logic that today, with 54 years better technology, the farthest that NASA can send an astronaut into space is 1,000th the distance to the moon. That's why there's mannequins orbiting the moon, right? And so what they're really claiming is, in 1969, ahead of schedule on the first attempt, when all of NASA's computers combined had 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone, they sent astronauts 1,000 times farther than they can do today with 5 decades better technology. So they're claiming that there's 1,000 times greater space traveling technology in 1969 than there is today. That's a scientific and historic impossibility. That proves it. So the only reason people don't see the manure for what it is their desire to keep it candy. Glenn Beck, I did his show a while back, and he fawning over the Apollo astronaut, the one who has the audacity to claim he's a Christian and therefore you should believe him, right? And Glenn Beck's mind, I know America has gotten bad, but at least we went to the moon. If he only knew, a guy like him who claims to be anti-corruption is defending a guy complicit in multiple homicides, widowing wives and orphaning children, and Glenn Beck is treating that criminal like a hero because he doesn't want to accept the fact that the government is so corrupt, more than he knows, that they would fake the moon landing, which they certainly did. Rant number 3. No extra charge.
We got a comment here from somebody that a couple of people messaged this on Twitter as well today before the show, and it's explaining photos of landing sites, tracks from devices left behind.
Well, like I said earlier, that means nothing. We already have the criminals faking a full body picture of an astronaut they claim is on the surface of the moon that was taken at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, according to an eyewitness. So you're asking the criminals who faked all those moon pictures that more pictures from them is proof that we went?
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
I think it's a perfectly reasonable answer. If we go from like the moon missions being fake, do you believe that's what NASA was originally set up to perform? Do you think NASA has a use outside of that? Because I've always been one for looking at videos from the ISS and like inconsistencies on the videos from the ISS, and that it confuses me with the whole entity of NASA and what the fuck they're actually up to.
What are they actually up to?
Well, Richard Nixon, who was president at the time during all of the fake moon landings, said that the number one greatest threat to the United States of America at the time wasn't Russia, wasn't China. It was American citizens protesting the federal government. That was what he considered the biggest threat to America. Our own citizens who are mad at the corruption of the federal government. If those people would just accept that we're corrupt and leave us alone, we would all get along better. Okay. So what did they do? They had a pep rally. And President Johnson, who was there at Cannon Air Force Base the first day of filming, came up with the code name for the fake moon landing called Slam Dunk. Because when you fake the moon mission, you can guarantee 100% that it will be successful. So it's a slam dunk. It's a pep rally during the Vietnam War, during the protests. Give us something to cheer about. And I guess that's what NASA has evolved into. I don't know that it had any particular goal at the time. It's one of those things that is unfolding over time. However, now they've become a propaganda tool to show off and to do fake missions. You know, your program is called Alien Addict. Von Braun, the Nazi, who was only 2 years away from being thrown in prison, had he, not died for war crimes. That's what the State Department admitted, that they were about to throw the guy in prison in the early 70s, and then he died. He said before he died that the United States government was going to fake an alien invasion.
Yeah, the final
count. That? Now, the number one proof that we have that aliens exist are photographs from the people who faked the moon mission. Do you understand this? The pyramids and face on Mars. How do we know that they didn't make those up, just like they made up the moon pictures to get people to believe in aliens? Stephen Greer, I'm going to have to assume that he's sincere, but sincerely wrong. First of all, he says the moon missions are real. So if he can't discern that, I wouldn't trust his opinion about aliens. And then secondly, he says his number one proof that aliens are real is the lying Apollo astronauts say so. You see, Edgar Mitchell went around his whole life saying aliens are real and the moon missions are real. So I suspect the moon missions and aliens are about as real as each other.
We've had his business partner on, Reay Hernandez, before, with Edgar Mitchell's ex-business partner.
Now our source, he was the chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base, which was the Special Operations Intelligence Headquarters for the entire United States Air Force. He was the security chief. He's the guy who said as he was dying and fearing the judgment of God that he was a murderer. The MPs came in and they said, "Who did you kill?" He said, "A coworker in 1968. They said, "Why?" "To cover up the moon landing fraud." He thought it was morally wrong. He was going to tell the reporter, "I killed him." So that's how we know where and when the moon landing was fake. He said he stood beside President Johnson, who was there for the first of 3 days of filming, June 1st, 1968. President Johnson gave him a list of 15 VIP visitors who were allowed to observe the faking of the moon landing. Half the people I had heard of: Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, Wernher von Braun, James Van Allen. The other half I never heard of. One guy on the list that I never heard of, his name was Robert Emenegger. Robert Emenegger worked for the CIA. He said in his own memoir that he was at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968 for a classified reason. And then he went on immediately after to do all these talk shows and TV specials backed by the CIA, which said aliens are real. Do we really want to trust the people who faked the moon landing, what they have to say about aliens? I think they want us to believe in them. According to the latest radio telescope studies, you have to understand, radio telescopes have been pointing in every direction of the universe for over 50 years. And if there's intelligent life out there, they probably invented radio, right? If they haven't done that, I don't think they're ever going to be able to travel here, right? And there's not a single radio signal coming from anywhere in space. You see, the truth, I believe, is exactly the opposite of what the government wants you to believe, that life is everywhere. I think this is it. The latest scientific surveys of space say this is it. We're it. And so, isn't that interesting? Not that UFOs aren't real. I believe they are real, but they're from Earth. The top 2 UFO researchers said so. They've been studying UFOs and alien abductions for 40 years each. They came to the same conclusion, and when they told the public, they were kicked out of their own UFO society because everyone wanted to believe in the, Federation of Planets, right? They said UFOs are real, but they're not from outer space. They're from Earth, and they're demonic.
I think
we did a show about that.
Page is quite a lot with this. Yeah, we've literally just done a show about
Friday,
possibility being like extraterrestrial life being demonic.
And it's not extraterrestrial, it's interdimensional, right?
Yeah.
Jesus could suddenly appear and disappear in a room with all the doors closed, and yet he ate, and they touched him, and then he disappeared. I guess he's going through another dimension. If he can do it, maybe other entities can do it as well. Good and bad, yin and yang, going on, truth and lies, light and darkness, right? What an irony, what a poetic statement of mankind that our greatest accomplishment, our Tower of Babel, is a complete fraud. Just like the Titanic, the ship that God himself could not sink. And Richard Nixon, knowing that they were not on the moon, had the audacity to say, putting a man on the moon was second in greatness only to God making the universe. You see that? This is a constant thread in fallen mankind, and people want to worship the people who are stealing from them, lying to them, and killing them. How about that? You know, our world leaders have always been genocidal. There's not been a single time in the entire history of the world where the people who run the world were not genocidal. I wonder how they're doing it today.
How long do you think they've got left then until the lid gets completely blown off all of this?
Well,
because you mentioned the AI.
Yeah. I think the AI could be the finger out of the dike that can't go back in. You know, a lot of people in the UFO community are very smart, and they know that the pictures are fake. They can tell they're done in the TV studio, which they were. So you don't really go to the moon and shoot pictures in a studio. And yet they want to believe, well, there were really secret crews communing with aliens on the other side. NASA doesn't care why you believe that the moon missions are real, as long as you do. You can believe Neil Armstrong did it. You can believe secret alien crews did it, whatever. It's like this thing that happened for the last 3 years. They don't care if you believe it came from a bat. They don't care if you believe it came from a lab, as long as you believe that it's real, you see? And maybe it wasn't real. You see, how do we know? These people killed their own president. They started multiple wars without reason. They faked the moon landing, the greatest event in human history. And they say out of their own mouth they want to depopulate the world by 94%.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're twiddling their thumbs going, well, I hope that happens someday. No, I think they have a plan, and I think it's well underway. I don't think it's a coincidence that fertility rates have dropped by 65%.
No.
Right about when genetically modified food was introduced.
Didn't the Georgia Guidance say something along those lines, and then they got destroyed? Like, I think that was last year, was it? They took that.
That's right. They said they wanted
500 million
to take us down from 8 billion to 500 million, which is about a 94% reduction, right? If you have a room of 34 people, they want to get rid of 32 of them. Now, I hate to break the news to Lee, but it's me and Ollie. I'm sorry you didn't make it, Lee. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. They say you're too controversial for some reason.
Well, it's always the way. But the
you've done your homework.
It's funny you say about them wanting people to believe in this stuff, because that's something we've been saying for a while. Since 2017, since this whole sort of UFO disclosure narrative started coming forward, there seems to be a concerted effort to make, like, my mum and dad, which have never been interested in this stuff before, to make them believe in aliens all of a sudden. And and it does, like, when we've brought the whole blue beam topic up on this show like a bunch of times, and it does feel that whatever this play is being played out to is at the moment, it feels like there's some sort of end game for it at some point.
Well, yeah, you know, I thought that TV show Ancient Aliens was a one-time, film. Apparently not. Apparently it's been going on for like 3 years, 150 episodes.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is basically there was a DNA study came out about 20 years ago. And they took blood samples from every nationality on Earth, Eskimos and Swedes and South Africans and whatever. And with DNA technology, they're able to go backwards in time. And they concluded scientifically that every human alive today, whoever will be alive or whoever was alive, came from one woman, and no one before her. She suddenly appeared, just like the Bible says. How about that? Well, they don't want you to believe in God, because then you might stop sinning, and they make a lot of money off of that. So they have to come up with a reason why it matches the Bible without there being a God. And they said, okay, we got it. Weren't made by God. Don't believe that. We were made by aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the DNA proves, we all came from one woman, and suddenly she appeared with no evolution before her. Aliens put us here. They never ask in 150 episodes a question that I would ask as a third grader. Okay, if we were made by aliens, then who made the aliens? You see? Now, if aliens are really a bunch of liars, right, and they claim they're from 300 light years away, that can never be proven or disproven, you see, when the top 2 UFO researchers say they're from Earth and have been here all along, and maybe if they've been here for thousands of years, they can have a zero gravity technology that came from Earth, just like the top 2 UFO researchers said. If they're spiritual entities, the yang of Jesus, right, fallen angels or whatever, then Isaiah, I think 14, says that Lucifer, the chief of the fallen angels, wanted to be God, wanted to kick God and take credit for God. So if aliens are really fallen angels, and they're saying we're made by aliens, what they're really saying is humanity was made by Lucifer instead of God. That's what they're saying. And you look at, hidden in plain sight, the World Economic Forum, which boasts they appoint presidents and cabinets throughout the world of various governments. They boast about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right there in their logo, there's an O in World, an O in Economic, an O in Forum. They're $1 billion organization. They could spend $1 billion on a logo. Then there's a little half circle going through those 3 O's, forming 666. Their chief spokesman never said there's no God. He said, don't obey the Bible and don't believe in Jesus. Never said there wasn't a God, never said there wasn't a Lucifer. 666 is right in their logo. It's in the CERN logo. It's in the Google logo. Now, are these people who are super intelligent worshiping imaginary beings? Or are they worshiping real beings, seeing how they're smart? I don't think smart people would worship something that didn't exist. Do you?
No, this is one of the problems I've always had with is that there seems to be like a hidden religion that's only consists of people of note, and people in high positions, and you don't continue to do these things if you don't get results. Do you know what I mean? We were talking about this on a podcast the other day about the like child sacrifices to Baal and stuff like that over like millennia, and you don't keep throwing your own into the metal bull and lighting it on fire unless there's tangible evidence that you're getting something in return for it. You stop doing that at some point. It's really quite wild, and I can never really work out in my head whether there's something pushing back against it.
Well,
let's hope so.
I think women have the right to make the choice that they want to regarding a child that they carry. And it seems like it would be wiser to choose birth control before conception rather than after conception.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, worldwide, we have 6 million babies being pulled out of their mothers and thrown in the garbage every month. 6 million a month, right? In America, we have 500,000, 500,000 children go missing every year.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with them?
Did you know 300,000 in the UK? So when you look at that per capita,
sounds like it's millions worldwide.
Yeah,
Millions of children are going missing. Where are they? What's being done to them? You see, the longer I live, the more evil and wicked I discover the world is. And when people literally worship Lucifer, who comes to kill and steal and destroy, and to falsify the greatest accomplishment of mankind, right? And who knows what. So when Jesus said it's going to get so bad in the last days that only intervention from divine, heavenly creator is going to save anybody, I take that to mean that the evil people are going to win. They killed Kennedy in broad daylight. They had 200 eyewitnesses, and apparently they killed up to 200 of them. They faked the beginning of the Vietnam War. Congress passed a law, killed 3 million people. No one seemed to care. They faked the moon landing. They probably did 9/11, did this little thing for the last 3 years, right? I think they're just getting better and better and better. I don't think they can be stopped. While they technically could be stopped, right? I technically could do 300 push-ups today, but I'll probably only do 290. But with everybody watching nearly 40 hours a week of television, and then they spend 40 hours a week at work, then they have to sleep and go to the dry cleaner and have a meal or two. I don't think there's any time left over to make the world a better place. I think people are sheep being led to the slaughter. And these people who run the world, they want to depopulate it by 94%. And I think they're well underway to achieving that goal. That's the thing. These criminals who faked the moon landing, they're at large. Does anybody care? You know,
what do you think the reason is?
Murderers running around.
What's the reason though? What do you think the reason for the depopulation is? It so they've got more control because there's less of us? You know what?
Well,
what's the
first commandment? If you believe in the ancient texts, which every time they dig up something, they prove it to be true. Just a history book of what happened. I read the Bible. It's not flattering. If men were gonna make it up, they wouldn't make every hero in there, you know, a fallen person who commits adultery and incest and murder, which are all the heroes in the Bible do those things. The first commandment of God, right? You know what that is? The first time God said, do this or don't do this. It's be fruitful and multiply. And what do the Luciferian 666 World Economic Forum people want to do? The exact opposite. Mm-hmm. They want to get rid of the sons of Adam because we outnumber them. And so Genesis 6 says that fallen angels interbred with humans and caused the deformity of giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes. Do you realize it says in Leviticus, I think 19:19, don't crossbreed species. Don't do it. And when you do it anyway, when you take a horse and I think it's a donkey to get a mule, the mule is sterile. What a surprise. As soon as they put GMOs into the food supply, fertility dropped by 65%. You see, if there is a divine creator, which I believe there is, you can't have a flower and a bee, you know, evolving with 100% dependence on each other, right? Without a higher being. Evolution actually says something without a brain made a brain. That's what it actually says. A lower form of life made a higher form of life. It's the opposite of logic, right? Just because we can't understand something doesn't mean it's not true. That's the arrogance of people. They can't understand an eternal being, right? So God did not want crossbreeding. Evil spiritual beings, which is a third of the population of them, according to the Bible, a third of angels rebelled against God. That's a lot. They intermarried with humans. They produced Nephilim, half human, half angels, right? And it said that the flood was to get rid of them, and they somehow survived anyway. I guess their angel friends, relatives, somehow protected them during the flood. And it came out recently, thanks to this brilliant high school student. She did a genealogical study of about 500,000 names of all the presidents of the United States. They're all from the same bloodline except one. How about that? And then you look at Genesis 3:15. It says that there will be war between the seed of Adam, which means future offspring, and the seed, future offspring, of the fallen angel Lucifer. And all the world leaders are almost of the same bloodline. You see that? It says right there, there's only two bloodlines on earth, the one from Adam, be fruitful and multiply, the one from Lucifer that's trying to kill the sons of Adam, right, out of their own mouth. That's their goal, 666 in their logo. And you can prove that every president except one was one from a bloodline that goes back to the 1300s somewhere in England, and it can't be traced before that at the moment. So it looks like the world leaders are of a particular bloodline, and they're trying to get rid of the other bloodline. How about that?
You mentioned them wanting us to stop procreating, and Elon Musk, he's stood out and said, you need to have more children. What do you make of that guy?
Well, I think he's highly intelligent, and I think he's correct. That overpopulation is a myth. It is a myth. The people who want to depopulate 94% of us, they have to say we're overpopulated, otherwise we'll know they're homicidal maniacs, right? So the fact is, the entire world could fit comfortably in the state of Texas. Almost everybody lives on the coast, and the rest of the land is completely empty. The world is not overpopulated at all. But the wicked people who run the world are trying to convince people of that as an excuse for them getting rid of most of us who are of the sons of Adam, and they're of the sons of the fallen angels. You see that? I know it sounds too simplistic and too bizarre, but it is what it is. I edited an interview of the former vice president of a certain company that makes a certain medicine that for some reason millions of people took for an illness they didn't even have. And he's saying, look, I worked at this company for 10 years. There is no reason to take it, meaning this alleged, problem going around is being manufactured. Secondly, this medicine is not good for you. And thirdly, and I'm watching him come to the conclusion, and he's astonished himself when he says it. I guess they're intentionally trying to kill millions of people. Do you realize that in the last 100 years, there has been more genocide from Hitler and Pac and Stalin and Mussolini in the last 100 years than in the 6,000 years of history before that? That's less than 100 years ago. Instead of shooting everybody and gassing everybody, they're using a different methodology. They're using technology. So what can you do? It is what it is. The Bible says, save yourself from this corrupt generation. The guy who confessed that he eyewitnessed the moon landing fraud, that wasn't the first thing out of his mouth. The first thing, as he's fearing the judgment of God days away, is he murdered somebody who wants to be forgiven. And as best as we can tell, when you confess your sin and renounce it, say, I pledge not to do it again, you're forgiven. King David, a man after God's own heart, murderer, adulterer, forgiven because he repented. And so maybe that's all we need to do. It's not my favorite scripture, but I think it's the most important one to me, is what good is it to gain the whole world and forfeit your soul? These wicked people will gain the world, and then they probably won't make it into eternal life. And that's a bad calculation blunder on their part. So let them have it. Let them have the world, and try to live a godly life, tell the truth, sin less, be more generous and kind, and love your enemy. We can't be, mad at the wicked people who run the world. Jesus said something no other religious leader said. We've got the Muslims bombing the Jews bombing the Muslims, and the so-called Christian United States bombing everybody else. Jesus said, love your enemy. If you don't love your enemy, you're no different than a non-believer. Non-believers love people who love them. If you're really godly, you'll love your enemy. Bill Gates, bless his heart, was a little baby with deformed upbringing, and you can tell from his body language that he is mentally ill. the way he rocks back and forth, the way he talks with his hands like an autistic person, like this, the guy's mentally ill. To what degree he'll be given grace or not, I don't know, but I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him. He's put his bet on the wrong player, and so be it.
But did you, when you did Astronauts Gone Wild, there was, I mean, did you interview 7 of them?
I tracked down at least 8 of them.
8 of them, yeah.
Some of them we had to catch at live events like Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins, who don't give interviews. 2 of the 3 of the guy in the famous mission don't give interviews. And then the other ones we set up, time with them at $2,000 an hour cash is what they demand.
So obviously you've got cuts because you've got to get it all into the documentary, the bits that you need. Did any of them, when it was off camera, afterwards kind of give you a wink or anything like that? Has any of them ever approached you and giving you the nod to say, yeah, you're right?
Yeah, 2 of them off camera made it crystal clear to me that I'm correct, and good luck trying to prove it because the world doesn't want to hear the truth. And so be it. I'm not going to say that, but that's the way that it is. And one of them or more, I suspect, is still alive when they appear to be dead. I was confirming the information in the book. Like I said, it's an audio that I read, Kindle or print, at Sibrel.com, goes into all this detail about the eyewitness who was there. I'm confirming this information with his son about 2 years ago, and CIA agents show up at his house, threatening to kill him and his family just for telling me about his father's participation in the moon landing fraud. And so we have some information that's, of them confirming these details. And they said, like I said, good luck. And when I called a couple of people on this list that the chief of security gave me, who President Johnson gave him, we published this in the book at Sibrel.com. I called up 2 of those people because someone asked me to call them up. And I wasn't thrilled about letting them know I had their name on this list before I published the book. But one of them was Eugene Krantz. And I called him up, and he doesn't say hello when he answers the phone. He just waits for the other person to speak, kind of strange. Looking at the counter, is this is working? I hang up, call him back. And then apparently these guys have scrambled satellite video phones in their houses in retirement to, discuss their secrets with their friends who are part of the same conspiracy. And apparently it wasn't working, and he thought I was tech support. And he said, when I called him about 2 years ago, is this, are you calling about the satellite conference with Cernan? And I'm like, no. Well, at that point, Eugene Cernan, Apollo astronaut, Apollo 17, allegedly died a year earlier. So apparently not. Apparently he's somewhere still having video conferencing military grade conversations with Eugene Krantz, flight director at Apollo. So, who knows? Maybe Eugene Cernan is still alive, or maybe Neil Armstrong is still alive. Don't want to have to deal with people like me. Several of them died before the 50th anniversary, conveniently, to not have to face questions about it. So they know, and it is a fact. They faked it. It's not a theory. And we'll see if the truth comes out. It would be a glorious day if it did. It would probably, ruin the finances and reputation of America. But they deserve to be ruined. I mean, we have to face facts, or we're going to go down the drain. We have to clean out the mold. We can't keep painting over it. It'll be to our own ruin if we do that.
Do you think it could change things then if it came out? I mean, change things in the way the world's going right now?
It could. You could theoretically have the wicked people who run the world take advantage of it. They could acknowledge that the moon missions are fake, force one of their players to confess it, to bring down the dollar, which they want to do, and bring down the U.S. New World Order, while it does mean Illuminati and Bilderberg Group and World Economic Forum, technically It simply means a new order. It means whoever's number one is no longer number one. What better way to take down number one economically, militarily, the United States of America, than to prove they faked the moon landing, bring them down a notch. They could then acknowledge who killed Kennedy, that 9/11 is together, and create a political party of truthers that they later subvert. They could do that. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen. I suspect they'll keep postponing returning to the moon like they've done 10 times. And by then, some asteroid or comet will hit the Earth, and no one's going to care anymore who killed Kennedy or whether the moon missions are fake, because they don't have clean drinking water. So that's probably what's going to happen.
You were saying before about like people wanting to repent and stuff. Do you think, or it appears to me anyway from looking at this stuff, that the truth of what happened weighed heavier on Neil Armstrong than some of the others?
Do I think what?
Do you think the weight of what they did weighed heavier on Neil Armstrong than the others, because he didn't seem to be able to hold himself quite as well as the others afterwards?
Well, they seem to be going through metamorphosis. Some from being corrupt to being less corrupt. Some from being less corrupt to becoming more corrupt. Neil Armstrong had the most pressure on him. I think one of the last chapters of the book is called NASA's Greatest Fear, where I interview the widow and son of a former astronaut who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, who was murdered by the CIA. Their testimony, not mine, because he wouldn't cooperate with the moon landing fraud. And so Neil Armstrong took his place, and when they asked him to fake it, I suspect he said no, and good luck. But they can't have him resign, be too many questions from the public. So they threatened his life. Probably didn't mean a whole lot to him, seeing how he flies experimental aircraft all the time. Then they threaten his wife and children, and then he reluctantly cooperates and then refuses to be interviewed unless the president asks him to. Refuses even to have a picture of him. Do you realize there's not a picture of Neil Armstrong on the surface of the moon? There's not a still photograph, not a single one. He refused to have his picture taken. The NASA archives are baffled. I go to their vault and say, show me a picture of Neil Armstrong, a still photograph of him on the moon. They go in and out, scratching their heads. So they can't find one. There isn't one.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he refused to have his picture taken. And that's why he rarely gave interviews unless the president asked him to. And as you know, from a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, on the 25th anniversary, he said maybe someday you'll be able to remove one of truth's protective layers. Mm. So, I've been to his house. I've been to these people's houses, talked to them on the record, off the record. I think the guy should have come clean at the press conference and then said, look, they threatened to kill my family. Please send security guards to surround my house. And then walked away and said, that's what he should have done. Now they have to do total commitment to the lie. And if one confesses, it's kind of confessing for everybody, bringing them down too, which they probably don't want to do. Don't want the responsibility of ruining America. But it is what it is. The truth should come out. Otherwise, these corrupt people are going to keep running us into the ground.
I can't see a day that he does. I really can't. I mean, I don't want it to be fake, but after watching the documentaries again, and I highly recommend anybody in the chat to go watch them. Some of the stuff just stares you straight in the face, and you could just see it. That there's been some tomfoolery going on up there. It begs the question, like, 'cause NASA are talking about going back. Is it 2026 or is it 2025? I think they said originally, but I think that got cancelled.
Yeah, it's been kicked down the road a few times, hasn't it? I think.
And the reason why I brought Elon up is because Elon's doing Starship, and he's going to fly that thing round the moon and back. I mean, do you think something like that is that are we up for time?
Yeah, I got to get ready. But, well, I think he means well. I think he knows the moon missions are fake, and he's working with NASA and is playing ball because he wants to, have fun and achieve his little goals. But they can't even send humans beyond Earth orbit in 54 years because of lethal radiation. I'm sure he's aware of that. And like you pointed out, they keep postponing returning to the moon 10 times, right? Mm-hmm. They could somehow drive cars on the moon and play golf on the moon with 1 million the computing power of a cell phone. But now the best they can do is send mannequins to orbit the moon and not even land. So, yeah, as you said, Ollie, the evidence is what it is. They did fake the moon landing. I wish they hadn't done that. The world would be a better place. But if there's a genocidal, homicidal maniac in your neighborhood who's at large, it's better to wake up to that fact than pretend that he's not there, right? And so you have to face facts. They did fake the moon landing. These same liars and murderers are in power today. What are we going to do about it?
Well, Bart, honestly, thank you so much for your time. I know we had an hour with you. So this perfect with the question here from this good fellow here. Where can people find the book? There are links in the description, people, where you can find Bart's platforms, his website. But where can they find the book? What's the book called? And what price is it?
Yeah, it's in, like I said, the book is at Sibrel, S as in Sam, I, B as in boy, R-E-L, Sibrel.com. You can link to it in the description. And it's an audiobook that I read myself, Kindle or print, and it has 17 interactive video links, which are at Sibrel.com. I write a chapter and I say, look, if you want to understand the next chapter, go to Sibrel.com, watch link 1, link 2. And you'll see I back up everything that I say. And you'll come to the same sad conclusion that I had to, which is, unfortunately, they really did fake going to the moon. And because they won't admit that, these same criminals are in power today. And so that's a dangerous state to be in. You can discover all of this and watch many free videos, including a funny thing happened on the way to the moon right now at Sibrel.com.
Are you working on any projects in the future?
Well, I'm trying to produce my first fantasy feature film. So if you got $5 million, you can PayPal it to me, and I'll give you half the money from the proceeds.
It's the chat can be pretty generous. Maybe they'll be able to help out.
Yeah.
Go over and give Bart some support, people. Bart, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been amazing and well worth staying up for. And we'd love to get you on again in the future. But we thank you so much, and good luck with the new project.
Well, thank you, Ollie. Thank you, Lee. Take care.
Thank you so much, Bob. Bye-bye.
20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
Mr. Armstrong, Bart Sibrel, ABC Digital. Wanted to give you the opportunity to swear in the Bible that you walked on the moon. Will you put your left hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
That's one small step for man.
Mr. Sibrel, you do not deserve answers.
Do you think you can get to heaven without repenting? Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon? Then put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon. You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me. Ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector good.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long
Also, you can check out our links in the description as well, people, and get yourself some juicy merch.
Subscribe to the podcast.
Exactly. Go subscribe now.